The small bell over the local corner store door jingled. Heads turned. Standing in the doorway was former President Donald Trump, but it wasn't the suit, the tie, or even the unmistakable face that shocked everyone. It was the little boy holding his hand. The child couldn't have been older than 8. He wore slightly oversized clothes and tattered sneakers. His name was Tyler. Quiet, wide-eyed, and clutching Trump's hand like it was a lifeline, Mr. Jenkins, the old store owner, adjusted his glasses. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. Trump walked in casually, waving off the gawking stares. "We're just here for one thing," he said with a small smile. "And Tyler here is going to pick it." The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Why was Trump in Millbrook? Who was the child? Why here? Tyler scanned the aisles like he was searching for something sacred. Trump stood back, watching as usual. Commanding presence softened by something else. Concern, maybe. Even cared at the back, near the toys. Tyler paused. He stood in front of a shelf stacked with journals and notebooks. He picked up a plain leather wallet, looked far too serious. "For a kid, you sure that's what you want?" Trump asked gently. Tyler nodded. "Yes, sir." Trump paid in cash, then turned to leave with the boy. But just before stepping out, he looked back. Sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest truths. No one quite understood what he meant. But to Mr. Jenkins, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would ripple through their quiet little town in ways no one could have imagined. And it all started with a notebook. And a mysterious little boy who walked in with Trump. News spread fast in Millbrook. Within hours, whispers filled diners, churches, and gas stations. Trump had been at Jenkins's store. With a kid, they said the boy picked out a notebook. Just one thing. No one knew who the boy was. He wasn't local. That much was clear. But somehow, Trump walking into a dusty old store with a child stirred more curiosity than any political rally ever had. Mrs. Langford, the local librarian, watched the black SUV drive past her window slowly. Trump sat in the back, the boy beside him, hugging the notebook to his chest. He didn't look scared, she told her husband. Just quiet, like he's already seen too much. Some assumed the boy was a relative. Others thought it was some publicity stunt. But those who looked closely at the child's face knew better. He didn't look like someone in a spotlight. He looked like someone carrying a story heavier than any 8-year-old should bear. Later that afternoon, a letter appeared at the mayor's office. It was typed, sealed, and marked only with a gold T. Please make no announcements. No press. This visit is personal. I'm asking for your understands and IGN PS. The boy has something to share with the world. Let him. That night, Mayor Ruth Holder couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, watching the stars, wondering how a child in a notebook could cause such quiet tremors in a town so used to stillness. Across town, my modest hotel room, Tyler opened his new journal. He sat on the bed, knees curled, the notebook resting on his lap. Trump sat across the room, sipping coffee, silently giving the boy space. Tyler hesitated, then began to write. "Dear Mom," Trump looked up. "I miss you every day," Tyler wrote. "Today I got a journal. A real one. You always told me to write. When the pain is too big to talk about." Each word seemed to unlock something. Memories. Grief. The weight he'd carried in silence. He wrote about the shelter. The bus rides. The nights he pretended to be asleep so he wouldn't hear the other. Children crying. He wrote about the day she didn't wake up and how no one ever explained why. Trump said nothing, but his eyes never left Tyler's small, trembling hands. When Tyler paused, Trump asked gently, "Do you want to share your story with more people?" Tyler nodded. "But I don't want them to feel sorry. I want them to understand." Trump leaned forward. "Then let's help them understand. The truth has more power than most people know." Tyler blinked back tears. He looked down and wrote, "One more line. This is not a sad story. It is about what happens next." That sentence would one day be quoted across the country. But for now, it was just a boy writing to his mother. And a man who believed the world needed to hear him. By morning, 5 pages were filled. Trump made calls, not to news stations, but to people he trusted. One was Rachel Wells, a children's trauma therapist and former Navy medic. Another was Dan Foster, a publisher known for turning survival stories into bestsellers. They came to the hotel that afternoon. When Rachel entered, Tyler hid behind the curtains, notebook clutched tight. Trump knelt beside him. "She's not here to take anything. Just to listen if you let her." Slowly, Tyler stepped out. He held out the notebook. "You can read it, but please, don't change anything." Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor and began reading aloud. Her voice cracked twice. She wiped her eyes and kept reading. Dan listened silently. When she finished, Dan looked up. "This isn't just a child's pain, it's a child's clarity." Trump nodded. "I don't want press. I want purpose." Rachel turned to Tyler. "Would you let us help share your words? With schools, families, maybe even Congress?" Tyler thought for a moment and gave a small nod. Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "This," he said, "is going to change more than just your life." And so, the idea was born. Project Tyler, a movement to help children express grief, loss, and hope through writing. It started with a single journal, and it would go on to reach the hearts of millions. The next morning, Mayor Ruth Holder knocked on the hotel door. Trump opened it. "I'm here as a person, not a politician," she said. "I'd just like to meet the boy." Trump looked to Tyler. The boy nodded shyly. The mayor knelt to his level. "We don't know each other," she said, "but I read something you wrote." She reached into her purse and pulled out a printed page. Tyler recognized the paragraph. "Sometimes I dream of being invisible again," Tyler wrote. "Not because I want to hide, but because back then no one expected me to smile." Mayor Ruth's eyes welled with tears. "You're brave, Tyler. Not just for surviving, but for sharing," Tyler whispered. "I just want to help kids like me." "You already are," she said. Trump stood silently nearby, watching. There was something extraordinary about the way this small boy held a town's attention without raising his voice. Without asking for anything, the mayor leaned closer. "Would you be willing to read something at the community center? Just a few pages?" Tyler hesitated. I don't know if I can." Trump spoke gently. "You don't have to speak it. Let your words speak for you." Tyler clutched his journal. Maybe, just maybe he could. The Millbrook Community Center was packed. Word had spread. The mysterious boy who walked into Jenkins's store with Trump was going to read his story, or at least have it read. Tyler stood beside Rachel on the small stage, journal in hand. He trembled slightly, eyes darting across the crowd. Trump sat in the front row, arms crossed, nodding with calm encouragement. Rachel began reading. Each sentence landed like a soft breeze, gentle, but full of meaning. "When you lose someone, people say you should talk, but talking is hard when your heart is full of whispers. Sometimes I look at the sky and think she's up there, painting the clouds so I won't forget her favorite color." By the time Rachel finished the third page, the room was silent. Many had tears in their eyes. An elderly man stood up. "I lost my wife last year," he said, voice cracking. "I haven't spoken about it, not once. But this boy, he's given me words I didn't have." A teenage girl stood next. "I write poems no one reads," she said. "Can I share one?" She did, and it was beautiful. It became an evening of stories, of healing, and it all began because a child picked a journal in a dusty store. With Trump quietly holding the door open, though Trump had asked for privacy, stories have a way of escaping even when whispered. A local blogger, moved by the reading, wrote a heartfelt piece, "The Boy, the Notebook, and the President Who Listened." By morning, it had 300,000 shares. By noon, a national morning show reached out for an interview. Trump declined. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about him." But Tyler's words had already found wings. Letters began pouring into Millbrook from children in foster care, from grieving parents, from teachers wanting to start writing groups. One letter stood out. It was from a boy named Jalen in Detroit. I didn't think anyone knew how it felt until I heard about Tyler. Can you tell him? I'm writing again too? Tyler read it over and over, then turned to Trump. Can I write back? Trump smiled. Of course. Better yet, let's start something bigger. And that's how Letters of Light began, a national campaign to connect grieving children through journals, poems, and handwritten letters. One journal, one boy, one quiet visit to a corner store. The ripple was becoming a wave. Within a week, Letters of Light had a small website, an ale box that needed daily pickups. Trump personally funded its beginnings, but insisted his name stay in the background. Tyler read every letter. There were stories from children in hospitals, teens in group homes, and adults who never stopped grieving. Each one touched him. But one stayed with him. Dear Tyler, I lost my brother in a car crash. I used to draw, but I stopped. After reading what you wrote, I drew him for the first time in 2 years. Thank you. Tyler closed his eyes, imagining a kid somewhere coloring again. Rachel and Dan helped him reply to as many letters as they could. You're not just telling your story, Rachel told him. You're giving others permission to tell theirs. At night, Tyler would write in his journal, then tuck it under his pillow. He no longer started with Dear Mom. Now he wrote, Dear World. One evening, Trump sat quietly near the window, looking out at the stars. Tyler, he said softly, I've given speeches to millions, but what you're doing, it's braver. Tyler smiled. You held my hand when I was scared, he said. I think I'm ready to walk alone. But no one knew. Tyler's biggest entry was yet to come, one that would not only reveal a secret about his past, but also about Donald Trump. Tyler's new journal entry began differently this time. There's one page I never thought I'd write. He wrote about the day he was found alone in a shelter, clutching his mother's coat days after she passed. How no one claimed him. How a social worker had once called him the forgotten file. But he also wrote about the day everything changed, the day a tall man in a suit visited the shelter, asking to see the children with no next of kin. That man was Donald Trump. Unbeknownst to the public, Trump had quietly sponsored shelters across the country, making unannounced visits. No press, no photo ops, just connection. Tyler hadn't recognized him that day. Trump, in turn, hadn't remembered every child. But something about Tyler had stayed with him. Later, a staff member found a photo in the shelter's archived digital records. Trump crouched down, tying a boy's shoelace. Rachel showed it to him. Trump stared at the image for a long time. This was him? He asked quietly. Rachel nodded. You didn't just walk him into the store, Mr. President. You walked into his life a long time ago. Tyler hadn't shared the photo with the world, but he taped it inside the back cover of his journal. He wanted the story to be complete, and that's when he made a decision. It was time to speak, not just with ink and silence, but with his voice. The White House invited Tyler to speak at a National Children's Wellness Conference in Washington, D.C. Trump, no longer president but still deeply respected, was asked to introduce him. The auditorium was filled. Leaders, educators, advocates. Tyler stood backstage. Trembling, Trump knelt beside him. You've already changed lives, he said. This is just telling them how. Tyler stepped onto the stage, clutching his journal. The room fell into a hush. My name is Tyler, he began. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to remind you that some kids don't need saving. They need someone to believe their story matters. He paused. I thought being forgotten meant I didn't matter. But one day, someone walked into my world, gave me a notebook, and I learned something. He flipped to a page and read, The pen is heavier when you carry pain, but it writes brighter when you use it to help others. The audience rose to a standing ovation. Trump followed, stepping to the podium. But he didn't give a speech. Tyler didn't just write a story, he said. He rewrote what it means to lead with truth, humility, and heart. It was one of those rare moments even political opponents clapped together. Back in Millbrook, town transformed the old library's basement into the Letters of Light Center while preparing for the opening. Rachel found something unexpected. In the back of Tyler's journal was an envelope. It was sealed and addressed in Tyler's handwriting. To the man who found me twice. Tyler hadn't known if he'd ever give it to Trump. But that evening, he placed it in Trump's hand. "You should. Read it now," he said. Trump opened it. Inside was a drawing, a crayon image of Tyler holding hands with Trump, and a note. "When I was little, I didn't know your name, but you tied my shoes when no one else would. You didn't know it, but you kept me going. The second time we met, you gave me a voice. I think maybe God sent you twice. Thank you for remembering a kid who had no name." Trump's hand trembled. He said nothing. Then he pulled Tyler into a hug. "I didn't save you," he whispered. "You saved me." A week later, a woman arrived at the Letters of Light Center. She was in her 70s, carrying a small purse and a worn folder. Her name was June Reynolds, a retired nurse who had once volunteered at the shelter where Tyler had been found. She had something for him. Inside the folder was a sealed letter. The handwriting was familiar. It was from Tyler's mother. "If anything happens to me," the note read, "and my boy is alone, please give this to the kindest soul who watches over him. His name is Tyler. Tell him I see him in every sunrise." Tyler clutched the letter to his chest. It was proof, confirmation that even in her final days, his mother was thinking about him that night. He read it aloud to Trump and the team. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I want this letter in the book." So it was his story became their story. Don Foster, the publisher, worked closely with Tyler, Rachel, and Trump to compile the full journal into a book titled The Boy with the Brightest Pen. It featured not only Tyler's journal entries, but letters from children across the country. The book launch was modest, but within days, it hit bestseller lists. Not because of fame, but because it was true. True pain, true healing, true. In children's mental health programs, he said, people began calling Tyler America's journal boy. Tyler only smiled. "I'm not famous," he'd say. "I'm just someone who decided to write instead of hide."
Months later,
Tyler visited a local school. The teacher had given the class an assignment. Write your own letters of light. When Tyler entered the classroom, the kids gasped. Some held up their own journals. One child whispered, "You made it okay for me to cry." Tyler read with them, answered their questions, and gave each student a new notebook. Each was embossed with a golden star and 5 words, "Your story matters. Keep writing." Before he left, he turned to the teacher and said, "This is where it all begins, not on TV. In rooms like this," teacher nodded, "you're living proof that one child can inspire a generation." Congresswoman Elaine Park soon introduced a new proposal. National Children's Voice Day, a day to honor kids who use writing and art to process grief, trauma, and healing. She cited Tyler's story directly. Tyler was invited to Capitol Hill. Trump went with him not to speak, but simply to stand behind him. Tyler read a short poem. "You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be big to be brave. Sometimes the smallest pen writes the loudest change." The motion passed overwhelming. Bipartisan support, America would now have a day to honor children's voices. Because one boy walked into a store with a man who believed in him. The day came when Tyler had to speak without Rachel reading beside him, and without Trump standing behind him. The venue. Facing young leaders from around the world, his palms were sweaty, his heart pounded. But then he remembered he had once been a nameless boy, too afraid to speak. Now the world was listening. "I'm not here because I'm special," he began. "I'm here because someone believed I was." He told how he once thought writing was just a private escape, never realizing it could be a bridge between hearts. "The pen became my friend, and then my sword. My words became my way out and my way in." He paused. "If you're afraid to tell your story, I get it. But I promise your silence hurts more than your truth ever will." The room erupted in applause. Tyler had found his voice, and the world leaned in to hear it. One quiet Sunday, Trump and Tyler drove to a small cemetery outside of town. They stood before a modest grave, adorned with fresh flowers and a handwritten note It was Tyler's mother's final resting place. Tyler knelt beside the stone. "I kept writing, Mom, just like you said." Trump stepped forward and placed something beside the flowers. It was Tyler's original journal, the one he had bought in the store that day. "I wanted it to rest with her," Tyler said. "That journal saved my life." Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "And now it will rest with the woman who gave you the courage to fill it." They stood in silence, a boy, a man, and the memory of a mother who never stopped believing in the power of her son's words. A year passed. Letters of Light had grown into a national nonprofit, writing workshops in 300 schooled grief programs. In 80 shelters, community story circles across 20 states. Tyler Knight still wrote in his journal every night, but now he wrote with hope. He traveled from city to city, sometimes with Trump, sometimes with Rachel, meeting children who were once just like him in Detroit. He met Jelantha, the boy who started drawing again because of Tyler's story. They hugged, like brothers in Texas. He met a girl who had lost both parents in a storm. She gave Tyler a poem. "You gave me courage on a Tuesday night," with pages that glowed like a tiny light. Tyler read it aloud at their event. He cried because he realized the stories were no longer just his. They belonged to everyone who picked up a pen, because he did first, at a quiet dinner in Millbrook. Trump handed Tyler a small wooden box. Inside was a gold-plated pen engraved with, "For the boy who wrote the world brighter. Be watching what you write next." Tyler hugged him. "You didn't just help me write, you helped me rewrite what I believed about the world." Trump smiled. "You reminded me too." They walked together to the old corner store, the place where it all began. Mr. Jenkins greeted them with a knowing grin. "One journal changed everything," he said. "No," Tyler corrected. "One person who believed I had something to say, years." Later, Tyler stood on the steps of the new Letters of Light National Center in Washington, D.C. Now a teenager, he was no longer the shy boy clutching a journal. He was a voice, a movement, a living reminder that healing begins with a single page. Trump had grown older, but he watched with pride as Tyler spoke to thousands. "We don't get to choose our beginnings," Tyler said, "but we do choose what we do with the pain. If you're hurting, right? If you're afraid, right? If you feel invisible, right? And I promise someone will see you." The crowd rose in thunderous applause. Behind the stage was a small plaque, dedicated to the child who walked into the store with a president and walked out with a purpose. From one journal to millions of hearts, his story lit the world. And it all began with a child, a pen, and a man who simply chose to believe.